Hello, everybody. What I'd like to do this morning is actually to look at the beginning of Parshat Terumah. Parshat Terumah is such a powerful parsha, and let's have a look. Hashem speaks to Moshe, and he says to him, "Daber el bnei Yisrael, speak to bnei Yisrael, v'yikchu li truma me'et kol ish asher yidvenu bo." Speak to bnei Yisrael and tell them to bring yikchu li, take for me truma, this concept of truma, which is a portion of one's own things. Me'et kolish, from everyone, that is going to, his heart will give. Tikhu trumati, must take the truma. V'zot truma, and this is the truma. And now that the Torah then enumerates what it is. And if you look carefully, you will notice that there are 15 different materials in the truma that is called. And the Malbim points out and notices these 15. He says, why Dafka 15? Why would we specifically focus on the 15? And he says, because we need to understand that the Mishkan is not just a thing, but rather the Mishkan represents the entire world, not only the world that we live in, but Chol HaOlamot, every single world that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created. And if it represents everything that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created, it must be driven by that same thing that drove HaKadosh Baruch Hu in creation itself. And where do we find that? So there's a pasuk which says, Ki beyah Hashem tzur olamim. With the Shem Yud Hey, which is one of Hashem's names. It's an incomplete name. The full name is a Yud and a Hey and a Vav, a Hey, which we call Shem Havaya. That's with the name, which half of that, Yud Hey, HaKadosh Baruch Hu tzur olamim, he formed worlds. Which world, says the Malbim? Olam Hazeh, Olam Haba, and every world that can possibly exist in this world was created by this Yud and this Hey. The name of Hashem, and that Yud and the Hey, the 15 is really the number of materials that are going to be used for the creation of the Mishkan. And the Malbim points out that it's so important for us to understand that this number 15 isn't just isolated. We find the number 15 in the 15 Shir HaMalot. We find the number 15 in our Seder, Kadesh Rechatz Karpas Yachatz. There's 15 in that as well. The number 15 finds itself in the Dayenus as well. So 15 is a fundamental, because 15 is the road towards a connection, a deep connection with the Ribono Shel Olam. And if that's the case, then the Mishkan presents itself not just simply as a space for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to dwell into, but rather as a space for us to, in a way, mirror the creation of the world, or the worlds that Hashem created through our bringing all of these different materials. We mirror that, and in so doing, we become a partner to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in creation, and that's why it says, "Vasuli mikdash, make for me a mikdash." What's a mikdash? A place in which kedusha can dwell. V'shachanti b'tocham, and I'll dwell amongst them. Them, we know that Rashi points out. What does it mean? It doesn't say v'shachanti b'tocho. It doesn't say I'll live in the Mishkan itself, but rather b'tocham, in you, meaning in the people that create it. Because once you create that relationship, then you're able to dwell within the Mishkan. And we know that they're all different aspects of the Mishkan that are created, and each one of them is very deep and very important to begin to understand. But what we do understand, says the Malbim, is that the Mishkan, which serves as this world, reflects the human being who is also a representative of the entire world. And he says, in the same way as a human being, if he or she has something missing from their body, a mum, or missing a limb, an injured, even a gid, an injured sinew of some sort, they are not able to operate at the maximum effectiveness. So too, the world, if it's missing any part of it, it can't operate at its most effectiveness, and the Mishkan too. And so therefore the detail of the Mishkan that we're going to now spend the next few parshas on is so important because of the creation of the world. And the Malbim says the most beautiful thing, and on this we really need to reflect in an enormous way. He says, if you go into an orchestra, so you'll notice in the orchestra there's a lead instrument and the other instruments follow. The lead instrument is a smaller instrument than all the others. In general case, you have, for example, a huge philharmonic. We know that the violin is a powerful lead instrument in all of that. This is what happens is that the lead instrument plays and the others follow, and it makes this enormous harmony and this beauty. He says that's exactly what happens in the world. The world that we live in the world that we understand, the world to come, this world, all of the different worlds in which we live in, that is like, for so to speak, the orchestra. And that orchestra is waiting for the right notes to be played by us, the human being, who is like, let's say, like the violin. And it all depends. What music will be played by the orchestra will depend on what is led by the smallest of the musical instruments. And so he says, if we play music with the music of love, of connection, of chesed, of warmth, all of which come out of the performance of mitzvot and the adherence to Torah and the connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so then the world plays that as well. But however, says the Malbim, if on the other hand we do not play that music, but rather we play a music of apathy, a music of antagonism, a music of attrition against the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then the world itself plays that same music. And what does that mean? It means the world itself starts behaving in a negative way or in a positive way, depending on how we are behaving ourselves in that engagement. And so therefore we see that most beautiful idea that the Malbim is telling us, that we are reflective of everything in the world itself. Let's continue and let's find one of the kalim, one of the vessels within the Mishkan, in order for us to perhaps reflect on that a little bit and to see that the detail becomes so fundamental. And what I'd like to look at is the Shukhan. So the Shukhan is the place for the showbread. The Shulchan is a table. Comes along the Torah, and the Torah says, beautiful. You must make a Shulchan out of these atzei shitim. That's acacia wood. Make the Shulchan out of these atzei shitim, and it gives us measurements. It must be 2 cubits long, 1 cubit wide, and 1.5 cubits high. And and then you cover it, you make it out of wood, its base is wood, and you cover it with gold. And then you put a zer zahav saviv, a little gold molding, so to speak, around it. The asita lo misgeret, tofach saviv. And then in addition to that, you also put a misgeret. A misgeret, by its very definition, means like a place which holds in the structure. Tofach saviv, which is a handbreadth, you put around it, and you make a gold molding for that rim, for that misgeret. And then you make 4 tabaot zahav, 4 gold rings, and you put the rings on the 4 corners of each of the legs. Why? Lumata misgeret tiyera tabaot. The rings must be near the rim. Lebatim levadim laseit shulchan. What for? In order to carry the shulchan. And what are those? And what are they going to carry the shulchan with? This thing called badim. They're like poles. And you use the badim made out of atzei shitim also, this occasion, and you cover them with gold. And you use that to cover to carry the shulchan. So in all of that, we've got so much of the detail of what the shulchan should look like. And says the Kliyaka, he says that we understand that most of the commentaries agree that the Shulchan is Keneged Keter Malchut. It comes to correspond to the crown of kingship, of monarchy. And the Shulchan of king is really what this is. The Shulchan Atzei Shitim. Shulchan Atzei Shitim, if we look at that, it comes to 30. Shulchan Atzei Shitim. If we understand that, I'm going to leave that for the moment because it becomes quite complicated. Let's just look and see what is this business of the Shulchan. What is it they're serving for? Number one, it stands, as we said, of the Malchut, the place from which the kingship reigns. And why is that? He means Shulchan Gavoa Zeh Yotzeh HaShefa. So we need to understand that what is this? It's not the king of our world. This is the Shulchan, is the table from which comes the brocha, the shefa, the enormous amount that HaKadosh Baruch Hu blesses us. It's his table. It's the table of the king of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And it has a number of different things. And this brought out a number of the different kalim, the different articles that are found within the Shulchan. And that is that it has some complete measurements and some incomplete measurements. It's 2 cubits long and 1 cubit wide. Those are complete measurements, it points out the Kli Yakar. But it's got 1.5 cubits high. The height is broken. Why is the height broken? He says, because we need to understand that the Shulchan, the table itself, represents the blessings from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which have absolutely no limit whatsoever. However, the height of the Shulchan is coming from the ground up, which means that it's from the world of the Tachtonim, the world of the underworld. That's us, from where you are trying to aspire to greater things. And he explains that the reason why it's broken, we need to know ultimately that everything in this world has an ending. The brachas that come from HaKadosh Baruch Hu onto the Shulchan are completely and totally without limit. But for us to take from this world going up, that has a certain limit. And so therefore we find that the midot, that the measurements of the Shulchan are so carefully put into structure for us to understand that. And we'll begin to realize that every single thing in the Mishkan has a limit, has an understanding, has a detail, and in that detail that we can learn great lessons. Wish everybody a beautiful day, and we'll continue, please God, tomorrow.